So hello, Markus. I'm very happy to have this second conversation with you, the second one that we are recording. And first of all, I'd like to say that I was very surprised by some of the comments that we received about the first one. Yeah. And I was glad that people could somehow feel something in watching the conversation and could resonate with some parts of it. Especially as we were also talking about that resonance. Yeah. And so today I'd like to talk to you more about expressive arts in the field of psychology, and where is it and how it relates to the mainstream and how it's different than some other approaches, and especially how your philosophy is different, your personal philosophy, and what you concluded all these years have been different than some of the other approaches.
Well, in the interest of not polarizing expressive arts and psychology, to say that there are ways that our intentions are very aligned around healing. But these days, more and more forms of psychology are resource-oriented. But I would say that in expressive arts therapy, we are aware that there are concerns and issues. But as quickly as possible, after naming these concerns and issues, we move to working with the client to see what resources they have to respond. So it's a resource-oriented way of working. And that isn't unlike psychology, certainly, but I would say the emphasis is on, as soon as possible, after identifying the concerns, to increase the client's ability to embody what they see is useful, so that the focus is not only on having an insight into how to respond, but an embodied shift. So we're very body-centered. Of course, throughout the spectrum of expressive arts therapy, people work differently, but I would say work quite somatically, quite that visceral relationship with insight, so that it's possible that you have an embodied shift. So I say that just as a way to start our conversation, that we don't want to polarize, and certainly psychology is interested in helping a person connect to their resources. But I would say we just really emphasize how the arts can help you to give form, an active way to respond to the challenges that are not only creative, but an embodied creative response.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think maybe we can, in this conversation, a little bit more clarify it and see what are these elements of doing this. First of all, you call the problems concerns. I'm aware of that. And instead of disorders, for example, like what we have in diagnostic manuals. And then you talk about embodied insight, embodied understanding of what are those concerns. So I'd like you to say a bit more about that.
Life is full of so many challenges. And my work as an educator and a therapist is to increase the chances that someone will say, this is very, very difficult, and I can use some help. And I can say, great, it is difficult. No problem. Let's do it. Let's work with it. So my empathy for the client is important, to have that empathy, that to sense the pain that they're in, but as quickly as possible to move to compassion, to sensing my ability to respond to this client's challenges, and to move to compassion and action. Well, how shall we be with your concerns? Because if I see them as issues or problems, I might actually reinforce the fact that they're issues and problems, rather than saying, you've got some amazing challenges and concerns, and take time for both of us to be clear what those concerns are, what the difficulties are, and to sort a bit, what in these difficulties is just difficult, let's do it, and what really is a problem and needs to be addressed as a problem. So first of all, making that distinction between a difficulty and a problem, and that requires, this term that Eugene Janlin in the 80s brought, that I really like so much, is the felt sense of, this is painful, and I sense that it doesn't have to be a problem. It's just difficult, and I need some time and space to work with these challenges. So, I don't have to pathologize a difficulty.
Hmm.
Yeah, and certainly, my internship was working with people with paranoid schizophrenia, and I learned very quickly that there are some drugs that really help. So working as part of a team, learning to work with a psychiatrist, I learned a lot. It was great. If someone comes to work with an expressive arts therapist, maybe they were referred, or the person resonates with that after many years of trying other approaches. I like to think of what I'm doing, and not as an alternative, but complementary to all of the options people have for taking care of what they've been given. And sometimes people have been given bodies or minds or lives that present profound challenges.
So what I understand is also that the whole process from the beginning, the understanding, the formulation, and the planning of transformation is all co-creative, and you're a part of it as a therapist, and the other person or the client is the other part of it.
Well, maybe I'll interject there, Ashkan, is that in 1986, I wrote my thesis called Acknowledging the Third. And what happens actually is we want the third to arrive. So there's you and me working,
Mm-hmm.
and it seems that the arts and sort of this creative approach invites the mystery into, let's see how this is going to unfold and how we're going to be together. And what we're hoping for is that within the frame of the session, that the manner with which we hold our time together, we start to enter the mystery, and we work with the arts to support that mystery unfolding. And we call it in my book, Expressive Arts Education and Therapy, I talk a lot about what happens in that sphere that we're working in. There's a kind of a thickening and a quickening in the air. So yes, it's you and I, but it moves into, again, this word felt sense, the felt sense that something has entered in the room that supports this curiosity to unfold our time together kindly, intelligently, and creatively. So this entrance into the space that we refer to as the third. And I find that very helpful, that I'm not holding the client. I'm taking care of the moment, which includes the client, includes me, and includes the third, includes what's happening within us and between us and around us. So there's this kind of sphere that we co-create to explore in, very humbly, sincerely, intimately together, exploring and finding which questions come up that we can stay with, maybe for months and months. What are those questions we want to explore? And the arts are one of the ways to stay with these questions and explore. Yeah.
Mm, yeah.
So we don't want to lose the magical in the therapeutic process. Like, wow, where did this image come from? Or wow, how was I able to move like that? Something just shifted. Wow, what happened? And that the therapist could be saying that, not only the client. Wow, that was beautiful. We just went somewhere. So I'm not guiding the client. I'm setting a frame for both of us to enter this very respectful co-creation of our time together to create clarity and discover where there isn't clarity, and to stay with it, and what's it like, open it up.
And I'm thinking that actually building that, um, you know, not building, focusing on that uh, third element, or um, putting it into center of attention and making a space for it, can actually bring new experience for you. I mean, like, uh, this is a new experience for me in a relationship. Well, I'm aware of myself, aware of your presence, and aware of what's happening between us in the moment and in this space. So the whole experience can start a kind of creativity as it's new.
Yeah, we're co-creating clarity. I can't give the client clarity, and I don't ask the client to explain clearly what their challenges are. It's like we come together with a shared desire to create clarity. So as far as I'm concerned, everything I do is a co-creation, everything. So this attitude of let's see how things unfold. And yes, I do have skill from having worked for almost 40 years as a therapist. I do need skill for, how to set a frame that's very person specific, moment specific, situation specific. Is it a hard frame, a soft frame? What modalities, what might we explore? It does require skill, but that's only part of it. Of course, it requires my ability to forget everything I've learned and to be in awe of what's occurring at this moment, and to serve this moment firstly, and then serve it skillfully to increase the chances that the person will say, I'm not a big one for catharsis. I love when a client says, and I say, okay, there's a little shift. And I wait for them to breathe a little bit. And they say, something's moving here.
It's interesting what you just said, because I think you answered the question that was in my mind at the moment. I wanted to ask you that what has been some of the challenges or obstacles probably in building that with some specific people, with in your experience or in specific situations, regarding your own experiences in life, and that might probably affect your work. And yeah, that's it.
Actually, what I find is for myself and the client, wanting to be helpful and needing to change is counterproductive. Either of us showing up with want and need, you would think that it would be helpful. I want to be helpful, and the person says, I really need, to change. And it's actually, it creates a kind of lusting after an outcome that gets in the way of relaxing and being intimately in the moment and tenderly exploring. If we let go of wanting and needing to connect, to say, shh, what are you noticing right now? And that's the more phenomenological language. What are you noticing? Then my emotions calm down. My mind stops racing about how to be helpful. And what I find to be useful is just setting a frame where we just sort of let go. I let go of my need to be helpful, and the client could hopefully quieten the desperate to change and to meet in the here and now, and to take care of that little bit of like a tender opening into this moment, and open it up and explore and watch how all the stories we make about what we need and want start to fall away. And so the therapy for me is opening up again and again, newness, new ways of being in the moment. And all of our history of I want this and I need this and that would make it better. And we have all of these stories. And I'm like, shh. And just being gentled and quieted inside so that we can share the moment intimately and open up a new way, breathing life into this moment differently and growing that capacity to be growing something new until there's less and less room for all of the stories. If I had this, I would be better. And if I need this, and what is your sense of your core? Come back to your core, come back to you. And let's see if we can find a way to come back, and then come from that very beautiful place out into the world. How to come out, back out from that quieter, deeper place out into the world. Mm-hmm. So that the outer and inner are more congruent. I would be a very exhausted person if I spent my life wanting to be helpful. I just quietly show up and set a safe frame and sense that there are some things we can do that will be useful for living a life that has more sweetness in it, more okayness, more flow. Not because there's no difficulty, but because you can be in the difficulty with the sweetness and the flow and an ability to say, yeah, difficult, and let's go.
Yeah, I find it very beautiful because us, like people in this field of mental health or caring professions, usually have the powerful sense of wanting to be helpful and wanting to do something, to make a change. And you're talking about the kind of stillness that will actually bring you through transformation, or probably creating something new, or change. But change is not the starting place. Like, I guess what you mean is that essence is the starting place.
Yes, returning to what precedes all of the efforting.
What precedes, right? Yeah.
Precedes all the efforting. And Ashkan, I really want to emphasize that I'm certainly not saying that wanting to be helpful is wrong or bad. I'm just saying that I have found over the years it isn't sustainable.
Mm.
I would fall short all the time, or be disappointed because I can't control what someone does, after they leave, our working space. And so I don't set myself up for disappointment or the ups and downs if I was effective or not effective. We just do what we can. I much prefer that than saying doing the best you can. It's very stressful. Just do what you can. Show up kindly and intelligently, co-creating this time to see if we could possibly open up new ways of being, new ways of moving forward, and to have the person say, it was very useful for me to relax and be curious about what's falling away in my life and what's coming to be in my life. It's been very useful for me to just go through the week noticing, which is my favorite phenomenological word, and that lusting after an outcome to be better, to change, or for me to be better and help others to change, I find that it sort of gets in the way of the possibility of a sweet, lovely takeover of what's true and good from the core, replacing all of the distortions in the person's life. And many of those distortions were created in the desire to be acceptable or lovable. And people change themselves and then they don't know who they are because they efforted to be acceptable or lovable. So it's kind of like, shh, let all that go. Come back to, and I like using the phrase, to what you are, as a being. And let's see how your resonance with what you are, which is where the arts come in handy to work with metaphor. So a person says, well, I'm like the sun. And so, okay. So, and then they say, well, and there's been all these clouds around it. It's like, beautiful. That's a great description. And so then you have something to work with, and maybe they get up on their feet and maybe they act out the sun, or maybe they act out the clouds, and they have this sense of, maybe they're very touched by a very moment specific image that describes what they've been struggling with. And the clouds might come back and then clear up again. It's not like, okay, now I'm only the sun. It's to teach the client that the difference between when the clouds are coming in and the clouds are going out. The difference between efforting to be lovable and just being you. The difference. That's the therapy, that you cherish knowing the difference between when you're efforting and when you're relaxed. When, this is a difficult time, and now there's more ease, and just a kind being with the movement that is you. Everything is constantly moving around. The clouds come in and the clouds go, and the confusion comes in and then the confusion goes. And this kind of, we call it expanding the play range. We're not, in therapy, so now you're clear. But now you're clear that sometimes you're clear and sometimes there's pain and chaos. And relax and stay with it. Also one of my favorite expressive arts expressions. Stay with it.
Yeah, stay with it.
Always good to have a conversation with you, Ashkan. I'm already looking forward to the next time we get together.
Yeah, me too.
See you soon.
See you.